Hi everybody, Mary Brown here, aka Pterodactyl. Welcome to the Pterodactyl's Nest channel. Today I'm going to be doing a walkthrough and micro review of the Mystic Palette Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. This is available on his website, ciromarchetti.com. It's an independently produced deck, and it actually comes in two different versions, which I found out he hasn't done that before, released a deck that comes out, the same deck that comes out in two different versions like this. And that's really interesting. It was available in a full color version and also this muted tone. And there was just something about the muted tone that I was drawn to right away. But then I was drawn to the full color version too, which I had initially seen a few images of that. You know, I'll have a link in the description here also to an interview I did with Chiro for the Tarot Today radio show. We talked a little bit about the Mystic Palette Tarot and also about his Tarot Decorative, which is another deck available on his website. And also that one's out there in a mass-produced version from US Games. Review of that forthcoming. I'm actually doing a joint review of the Tarot Decorative in the Tarot Guild Facebook group as a live with my co-host Dax Carlisle. That's going to be on the last Tuesday of this month. I don't remember exactly what date that is, but I'll look that up and put that in the description as well, so you guys can see that too. But yeah, so because I did that interview, Chiro had shown me a couple images from this deck, and it was the full color version, and yeah, it was just I was just drawn to it immediately. And it's kind of funny because this is the first independent deck of Chiro's that I have ever bought. It's just kind of a weird thing. I think I had a weird philosophy about it, you know, about buying like independent decks. You know, I'm a big fan of mass-produced decks because I use a lot of decks. I'm a full-time reader on a psychic hotline, so you know my decks go through a lot. You know, thousands of readings, and I riffle shuffle, and I'm pretty rough on them. And you know, I look at decks that are independently produced, especially by someone of like you know Chiro's like artistic talent and creativity. I look at you know those kind of decks as works of art, and I can't imagine you know using them on a daily basis because I don't want to destroy works of art. But you know times have changed, and now indie decks are all the rage, and we're all used to paying like $65 for an independent deck. I don't do it very often. However, this was one that just really grabbed me and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it, you know, it comes in, you know, two different versions. And that was the tricky part too, was there was a full color version, which this is the book that comes with it. And it has, you know, some like full color pages in this. So you can kind of get a sense of you know, what the artwork looks like in the full color version. And they're both, you know, both versions of this deck are gorgeous. So it took me, I think it took me like a month and a half to actually decide which one was going to be my deck. And now I have it in, my goodness, this is not going to be a very unbiased review. You know, it's more of a walkthrough, so you can really get a good look at the cards. But my gosh, this is a deck that I can't imagine, you know, not using all the time. And I tried before I do this review, not to use it too much because I don't want to bend up the cards a lot or whatever. But yeah, this is the deck I've needed. It came with, this is kind of the cool part because I had never ordered from Ciro's website before. And you get this signed card. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you can see it. It's signed in gold at the bottom there. So that's kind of a nice touch, a nice autographed card by him that you get. Comes in a nice, quality sturdy box, magnetic closure to it, a nice ribbon to help you pull the cards out. There's this cool picture here of the full image that is on the deck as well. We'll see that. And then in the back in this version, of course, it says muted tone version. That's what it's called. I think I was referring to it as sepia, but it's not quite. It's muted tone, but there's colors in it too. And we'll talk about the cards a lot. Let me talk about the book a little bit first. The Mystic Palette Guidebook by Lee Bursten. And because I have this, and I also got the Tarot Decoratif, and Lee Bursten wrote the book for that decoratif book as well. I feel like I just had like a Lee Bursten reading fest. I've read 2 guidebooks by him now, and I don't know why, but I hadn't really been familiar with him before, and I'm a fan now. I love the way that he writes about the cards, and just, some of the things he says in here. Let me give you an example. I think just he writes the preface, he writes the book. He's done, he's authored a lot of guidebooks for Ciro. Looks like he says he's the author of the Marchetti Tarot Guidebook. I don't have that deck. The Tarot Decoratif Companion Book. I have that one. Tarot of Dreams Guidebook. Don't have that one. And the Universal Marseille Tarot Companion. I don't have the Universal Marseille either. He created 2 decks, Zodiac Tarot and Gay Tarot. Okay, I've heard of both of those, but I don't have those. And he contributed to text for Gilded Tarot Royale, Gilded Reverie Lenormand, Expanded Edition. Okay, I have the Gilded Reverie Lenormand, but just the mass-produced version. And he's contributed articles for Llewellyn's Tarot Readers. He's a technical editor of Absolute Beginner's Guide to Tarot. He served for several years as a forum moderator and professional card reader for a tarot discussion board. I wonder which discussion board. It wasn't ours at the Tarot Guild. Maybe it was like Eclectics or something. I don't know. I'll have to find out more about this Lee Bursten because I'm intrigued now, and I think he's a good writer. But I wanted to share some of the preface because it's really interesting and what he says about this deck. So let me find what it is that I wanted to say. It said, this deck uses the themes and meanings often assigned by readers and authors to the classic Rider-Waite-Smith tarot, but only as a starting point. Many of the Mystic Palette cards deviate from those meanings and travel their own paths. The theme of this deck is the creative imagination, both the artists in creating images that imaginatively play with the card's traditional meanings, and yours, the readers, in using those imaginative renderings as a launch pad from which to embark on your exploration and navigation of a life, whether yours or someone else's. This deck uses standard tarot numbering. All numbers are written in Roman numerals. Each card bears a Roman numeral except for the court cards, which bear their court ranks, king, queen, knight, or page, and the aces, which bear the letter A. No titles appear on the major arcana cards. We believe that the images, even when deviating in some degree from their traditional counterparts, still clearly identify themselves and should be familiar to most readers. The names for the minor arcana suits, wands, cups, swords, and coins, are used in this book, but do not actually appear on the cards. Thus, you, the reader, can choose to use other names for the suits if you prefer. For example, batons or rods for wands or pentacles for coins. No titles appear on the major arcana cards. The majors can be distinguished by the color of their Roman numerals, a very pale gold or yellow. Since working with the deck requires familiarity with Roman numerals, here's a refresher. You only need to know 3 things. X equals 10, V equals 5, I equals 1. So that's kind of cool because I thought, he has this whole Roman numeral chart, and I kind of thought like, wow, maybe I'm old, but I thought, didn't we all learn this? And it made me wonder, like, do they even teach Roman numerals in school anymore? I wonder that. Are there new tarot readers out there now that don't know that they have to learn the Roman numerals? I don't know. It's weird, right? But it made me think of that. But and he talks a lot about that talks about the numbers, the numbers 2 through the Roman numerals 2 through 10, the X, are also used for the numbered minor arcana cards. The first in the sequence of numbered minor arcana cards is called ace instead of Roman numeral 1. The only non-Roman numeral used in the deck is for the Fool, numbered 0. The earliest known references to the concept of 0 and the use of a circle to represent it are from India. This book is terrific, it really is. I could read the whole book, I read the whole book, but I feel like I could read it now to you because it's really a great book, but I don't want to spoil it for you. But I do like this where he says, and again, this is in the preface, this is Lee Bursten saying this, since personal creativity is the theme of the deck, Chiro and I want you to view the meanings listed here as merely a suggestion of the breadth and depth possible for each card. Feel free to use these meanings if they fit in a specific reading, but don't hesitate to abandon them if something more useful comes to mind. So I love that. I love that it's this idea, that about our own personal creativity, and the creative imagination. And I don't know, maybe that's why I'm so drawn to it, that could be the reason why. And here, and also this book is lovely. It really is. It's lovely to read it. Sure, the way Lee Bursten writes is just wonderful. But even like the use of some of the color pages in here is really, I don't know, it makes it more special. Anyway, let me just read a little bit more and then I promise we'll start looking at the cards. But there's an introduction in here by Chiro. And how long is it? I don't want to, yeah, it's a pretty long introduction. And I have to say, there's some really fascinating things that he says in here. And he just the first paragraph, he says, over the years, I've found that creating tarot decks has proved to be a roller coaster ride of mixed emotions. The high of completing a card that just feels right is often a temporary elation, soon followed by the low of working on others that may at some point feel labored and forced. Furthermore, there is, at least for me, no definitive endpoint. When finishing the last card should represent a successful conclusion to a project, instead, there are often lingering doubts and corresponding temptations to apply yet one more tweak to a composition or to change the size, position, or color tone of any given element. But at some point, of course, you really do have to decide that enough is enough. The 78 final candidates are merely the selection that made the cut. At various stages along the way, they were part of a much larger group, which for many, their fate was the trash can, be that in a physical printed form, as crumpled printouts thrown into the bin below my desk, or the virtual one on my computer desktop. These rejected efforts ranged from preliminary sketches to, in some cases, quite developed proposals. Tarot artists often reference the years they have dedicated to whatever deck they were or still are working on. By using years as a unit by which to determine the time dedicated to a project is vague. After all, it could be that the artist's work on the deck is secondary to other commitments and restricted to periodic evenings or weekends. In my case, however, for the duration of any given project, it is very much a full-time dedication. For this particular Mystic Palette title, with its 2 color versions and companion material, I would estimate the involvement using a far more relevant unit of reference, namely over 2,000 hours. Ironically, I did not begin the Mystic Palette Tarot with any intention or plan for an entire deck. I was merely working on a random illustration with no further purpose. Yet upon completion, it raised that familiar question again, what if? Just one more deck? After all, that illustration was of a foolish-looking fellow. All that was required was the inclusion of the little furry white companion, and another journey had begun. So wow, 2,000 hours when you really think about it. I like that he put it in that context, because that really gives us a sense of it. And I love that he says that, it started with that what if. I worked in as a film journalist for several years, and like every good story, every good movie, every good show starts with what if. So I think of that really ties into the idea of creativity. So let's go ahead and start looking at the cards instead of me trying to read the entire book to you. It's really worth it. I'll reference a few things later as we go through the cards. But here is the Fool card. And as you can see, this even in the muted tone version, like the use of colors is really interesting. And there's that little white dog. And what I love about this Fool, as you can see, is he's holding a tarot card, and it's a Marseille version of the Fool. So I thought that is, I don't know, it's a shout out, I guess, to tradition, but it's just really kind of a cool concept to see that. But anyways, you're here to see the cards. Here's the Magician card, and as you can see, there's no titles. The High Priestess, the Empress. I love the Empress with the jaguar in front of her. I love I guess, I don't remember if I asked him how he describes his work, if he considers that he, draws in this, creates in a certain genre or not. I think of it, I guess, as magic realism, because you have the sort of magical elements to it, but then you see these really real, lifelike characters and animals, especially. The animals in this deck really caught my eye. And there's a lot of use of symbolism, too, especially as astrology. This is the Hierophant. And again, no titles on the major arcana, but, Lee Bursten was right in what he was saying. Like, you don't really need the titles. There's enough there that you just know automatically, like, this is the Lover's card. I like how they're both wearing the jester hats. And here is the Chariot. And this one of my favorites, because I love these white lions, and there's the Leo symbol that you see there, the Strength card. And the Hermit with the lamp, and again, it's interesting, a lot of cards, I guess it's really up to, that creator, what correspondences that they might include. Some of our more, esoteric decks, I guess you could say, like Daniel Loeb's that I interviewed, him for, and that I did a walkthrough of his Rotamundi tarot. It's a whole lot of correspondences in that to Kabbalah and everything else. And You know, sometimes I think that stuff sort of crowds a card, and unless you read that way, unless you read using all the correspondences, it can kind of get in the way. What I like about the way Chiro did it is the way he kind of put them in there. Like when you look at this, the Justice card, there's Libra over there. It doesn't get in the way at all. It's there to remind you, and you can see it. And I get the sense that astrology, especially, has, some significance, for him. And I'm good with that because I feel like it's much better when a deck creator is, if they're going to use, correspondences in the decks that they do, I think it makes it's more authentic when you can see that it means something to them. Like they decided, like, okay, astrology is important. And it's not important maybe for every reader out there, but for many of them, many of us readers, it is. I can't say that it's like I don't read astrologically, if I'm saying that correctly. Um, you know, astrology to me is something I'm interested in. Tarot's my central practice, and I don't do readings that are based on astrology, but I have friends that do. And I think that it's great to include it in a way that it's there for people that want it, but it's not getting in the way of it. Like it's not crammed with symbols. However, this is the Devil card um, here, and the Tower card. I like that. However, I do think that this deck is really fascinating with a lot of the things that are included in the imagery that he's created here. And, reading the book was really fascinating to me. There was one part, I think it was in his introduction, where he talks a bit about the use of different symbols that he uses in the cards, or different where was it? Let me find it here. He gives us so much information here. Yeah, he talks about, I think it's in the Five of Wands, right? And we'll get to that. But he talks about why he puts some of the things in the images that are there, that maybe we wouldn't notice otherwise, or it's just so well thought out. Here's the Moon card. And I love the contrasting colors in this muted palette. Look at those. Look at the hands and the face. And then you see the dogs. He does such a great job with dogs. I don't know if you've noticed, like a lot of, see, I just feel like there's a lot of dogs in his decks, and they always look so lifelike. And I should have asked him about that. What, are these dogs that he has, are their preferred breeds? I think, gosh, what is it? I think it is the Legacy of the Divine tarot that he did, that in the, I want to say in the, maybe in the 10 of Pentacles, there's a golden retriever. It's either the 10 of Pentacles or the 10 of Cups that there's a golden retriever that I just love. And it does give you that sense of home. I think it's the 10 of Pentacles. Here's the Sun. And look how interesting this is, with the hand kind of holding the sun. It almost looks like it's on like it's a compass or something. Um, I'll have to look and see what do we say about that? I like to look at this and kind of, see my own things in it, but what am I really looking for here? Okay, here it is. Yeah, he said the Mystic Palette version of the Sun card is very much oriented toward astrology. The planets laid out against a circle immediately suggest a horoscope chart, as does the geometric design of the circle. The hand that holds the device, from which the planets hang on wires, much like a marionette's control bar. The hand controlling the strings can be seen as a reference to the eternal astrological debate over free will versus predestination. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's deep, man. It's really deep. And yeah, astrology is a thing in this deck. And, again, for me, astrology is not so necessary, so I don't really maybe pick up on everything. I'm familiar with the symbols for, the planets and the signs and stuff. But I don't know, maybe it'll become more important to me as I work through this deck and it'll just become like a second nature thing. Who knows? Maybe it will. The Judgment card. I like how this Judgment card is not, it's a really different image here. Sure, you can see, the body's rising up, and the hand reaching down. But there's something about it that I feel is like in the gate opening up. I don't know, it's more hopeful in a sense than like maybe the classic Rider-Waite Judgment card, which is, the body's coming out of the coffins and you're like, this is like the body, it's like the spirits rising from the graveyard. And for some reason, it just struck me a lot differently than, say, the Rider-Waite Smith Judgment card does, which I think is, it's kind of a harsh, image in the traditional card. At least I think so. And then here we have the World card. And we have like I like how he did the four creatures. And then you see the Fool, like walking away there. You see the little white dog turning back. And you get that sense it's like, okay, it's the end of the major arcana. And it's just really cool. And the lion there, the eagle, the bull, it's just the evangelist, it's just so special, I don't know. I mean, I've looked through this deck so much, and every time I keep looking through it, and I just, I'm so thrilled I got it. I'm so thrilled I bought this deck. It's weird, right? So here's the aces, and remember, we're getting into we just finished the major arcana. The Fool's exiting the stage there. The little white dog's looking back at us. And, now that we're entering now the minor arcana, we start with the wand suit. There's just the ace. All the aces just have the A on them. And there's no title for the individual suits. But, I mean, you can tell it's the wand suit. I mean, there's a wand. There's a dragon. There's this fiery kind of look to it. There's a jaguar. You really get that sense of fire, fire, fire. At least I do. So I don't think anybody's going to have any difficulty with this deck without having everything spelled out for them. I mean, again, if this is a deck that's supposed to, we're supposed to use our creativity, our personal creativity and our imagination. Having things all spelled out for us isn't, I don't think that helps a lot. I don't think that helps us to be creative, right? We don't have to think if it's all written out. So I love that he chose to do it this way. Here's the Two of Wands. You see those dragons at the heads at the top of the wands there. And the Three of Wands. And again, I could talk about every single card, but I'm going to make this a really long video if I do that. The Four of Wands. Here's the one I wanted to talk about, the Five of Wands. So this thing, right, this bundle of wands, this bundle of sticks back here, I learned something about that, and it's kind of a funny thing because, and Ciro talks about that in his introduction. That's what I wanted to get to. So yeah, the Five of Wands. And here, let me hold up the card while I read a little bit. I'm not trying to read the whole book here. While I read a little bit about this. And Ciro says, I don't consider that the infighting depicted in most Five of Wands cards, including my own earlier decks, fully communicates a concept of inner conflict rather than just general conflict. Therefore, I chose to show a facies, Fasces, in the background. That's this thing there. Maybe everybody knows this, and I'm the only one learning it for the first time. But okay, it says, therefore, I chose to show a facies in the background. This artifact, initially used in ancient Rome, was essentially a bundle of sticks, each weak and vulnerable in their isolated and separated forms, but which, when bound together, create an unbreakable bond. This is a perfect metaphor to describe the status of the various individual tribes of the central Italian region at that time and the force and empire they would become when united together. So iconic and powerful did this symbol become that millennia later it was enthusiastically embraced by Mussolini along with the romantic, nostalgic connections to those earlier days of glory and empire to become once again a political symbol, this time of the Italian Fascist Party. But its weakness to strength metaphor was so compelling and easy to understand that it was adopted by more than just the fascist movement, easily recognized it would serve other nationalistic ideas. Indeed, two large faces, if that's how you say it, sculptures, were used as part of the interior decor for the US Senate. So by using it in the background of my depiction of the Five of Wands, it provides a compelling juxtaposition and significance. The five untied wands depict the dissolution of that bonded strength and thus suggest the consequences of that breakup. I mean, dude, that what? I never would have got that. I'm glad that he wrote about it because I didn't recognize what it was. And again, I don't know. I'm behind on my studies of something, obviously, but I just love that he shared that insight and that he was so thoughtful to put that in the Five of Wands and have that juxtaposition. It's just the coolest thing. This is the coolest deck. It really is. And I love when I can learn something new like that. And here is the Six of Wands. I'll keep showing the cards and stop talking so much. The Seven of Wands. The Eight of Wands with the Centaur. I love that. I mean, yeah, like I said, it's like my most unbiased review, probably. Nine of Wands. And it's funny because in this card is so interesting. The Ten of Wands, and he talked about that during the interview we did, I think, because the concept he had, because in the mirror you see it. And so I guess the concept was that, that idea of a card of heavy burdens, that most burdens that we're carrying around, they're not, a bunch of wands on our back. There's what's going on in our mind. So that reflection was included in this card. And so that's clever. It's really thoughtful and deep. The Page of Wands with the dragon again. And the Knight of Wands. The Queen of Wands. I love that expression on her face. And I think he has talked before, I don't know if he talked in that book, about how I think he tries to make expressions neutral, kind of. Here's the King of Wands here. And yet it's funny because it's like what I've noticed in kind of, familiarizing myself with this deck is that when I look at the court cards in particular, and even something like the World card, any of the figures that have these expressions, I kind of feel like I'm picking up a different vibe each time I look at them. So yeah, they're neutral in that, it's not a big smiley face or not somebody who looks terribly sad or whatever, but yet they're very expressive. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the experience I'm having the more I look at these cards. And here is the Ace of Cups and the Two of Cups. And the Three of Cups, these mermaids. And the Four of Cups. And I guess what it is, I think I'm sighing a lot because I'm just like swooning, swooning. because there's so much to say about each of these cards, but that's like impossible to do without having like an incredibly long video that nobody will want to watch because nobody watches long videos anymore, supposedly. I do, though. I mean, I'll watch a video that's like 2 hours long, but that's just me. 7 of Cups and the 8 of Cups and the 9 of Cups. And the 10 of Cups, there's a doggy. The golden retriever, right? He must love golden retrievers. And family photos on the wall and that fireplace back there. It's just really, really nice. Nice. Here we get into, here's the Page of Cups. I don't know. This deck is just so gorgeous. And it's just, I feel like it's immediately like my favorite tarot deck. It's really weird. I've been trying to be sort of, no, I guess I haven't really been trying to be unbiased at all here. I'm trying to be neutral. I can't be neutral. King of Cups. I really, who am I kidding here? Ace of Swords. The 2 of Swords. And you know, this card kind of stood out to me. There is just something about the figure in this card that was just like, bam! And the light where the swords kind of, you know, connect there. You can imagine like a flash from the metal hitting each other, or maybe the sun gleaming off of it. But just a really, really cool way of doing the 2 of Swords. Yeah, you've got the blindfolded individual, but this is more dynamic than most 2 of Swords. You know, most 2 of Swords, she's just sitting there and the swords are crossed and the person's blindfolded and there's no sense of movement in it. So I like this because a lot of times when the 2 of Swords comes up in a reading, a lot of times to me, it's almost like it is that idea of stalemate, but also I think of like, you know, okay, this isn't going anywhere. You know, like if somebody asks a question like, oh, I don't know, you know, what did the person say about this? Or are they going to say, are they going to call me? You know, some of those standard questions. Usually when I see that 2 of Swords, I'm like, you're not going to hear anything because the card seems so silent and even like just like almost static. And so I love that this isn't static at all, that there's this movement in this, that there's like a real clear message she's sending about it. Like, no. And then look at this guy, the 3 of Swords. Aw, you know, yeah, his expression's kind of neutral. He's just got the tattoo there. I mean, maybe in my own head here, because I don't really see it necessarily. I feel like there's almost like a little, like a tear stain. You know, it doesn't necessarily look wet. I feel like, okay, this guy was hurt, you know? So, anyway, that's just me. And then this, I love the horse floating up in this 4 of Swords. Oh, and you know, I wanted to give you an idea. Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit more. I promise. I'm not going to read the whole book. But I wanted to give you an idea of the kind of meanings that Lee Bursten gives for the cards. So in the 4 Swords, I liked what he said about the horse. So the 4 Swords, so for each of the cards, you know, he gives like, you know, a few paragraphs, right? So there's 1, 2, you know, it's not a whole page of meanings for each card. And I don't necessarily feel like that's necessary. I feel like everybody's done that. We've read pages and pages of meanings of cards, but this is how he describes the cards. So the 4 Swords, you can see that good. I'm not shaking my hand too much. A winged angel, prone, floats in the air, shrouded in white. A white horse rears up. A church window stands in the background. This card stands for a period of rest and recuperation. Perhaps there has been a physical, mental, or emotional difficulty that requires recovery, or it may simply mean rest and relaxation in between periods of hard work. The white horse is a vision of the energy that exists as a future potential despite the present inaction. This emphasizes the necessity of regular periods of rest in order to stay at peak effectiveness. The church window suggests spiritual understanding often requires a quiet space and a quiet mind. In a spiritual context, a white horse can mean enlightenment. And then astrology. Jupiter in Libra, creative abundance. Jupiter will flourish in a peaceful environment, Libra. So that's how, even the astrological symbols are described. You see the sign for Jupiter there, you see the sign for Libra underneath it. So he does give you context for that. So that's really helpful for me because, again, astrology is like not my fort. I have a basic understanding of it. I've read a lot of books on it, and I still have just a basic understanding of astrology. It just didn't, I didn't absorb it. It didn't become a part of me like other things like tarot has. So yeah, there's a way into it. It's not like, if you're like me, you just see these astrological symbols and it's like, that's nice. I have to go look up what that means. He gives you just a simple explanation of it in the guidebook. So that's really cool. I appreciate that. And then here we have the Five of Swords, and I think this is an interesting depiction of the Five of Swords. And the Six of Swords, I love how the swords are in the water in this instead of in the boat. I love her hair too. That was the first thing I noticed was the hair. You have the birds, you have that owl. But I like the fact that the swords are in the water surrounding the boat rather than, sticking up in the boat like we're used to seeing. I don't know, that caught my attention. I'm not going to read what it says in the book right now to you because, get the deck and read the book yourself. Seven of Swords, the Eight of Swords. I love the use of color with the red blindfold and the cardinal coming out of the cage. That is so cool because that's a lot of times what we think of with the Eight of Swords. It's like, look, it's in our head. It's the way we're thinking about it. Open your eyes and you can be free. And I feel like the cardinal coming out of the open cage is kind of the hint at that meaning. Again, I could go, I could look it up I'm so drawn to that book. Seriously, I've got to see if we can get Lee Bursten to come on our radio show because I want to talk to him. I love the fact that he wrote this in a way that is just so accessible. 10 of Swords. Let's go back to that 9 of Swords. It's kind of an interesting they're all interesting depictions. But I kind of, this stood out to me because I like the background of it. I like the moon of it, the kind of the stormy kind of clouds, all those swords, and kind of the way that or the body is positioned, like she's like, pulling back. But I just thought it was cool that it wasn't like a person laying in bed and having a nightmare. And, he did something different with it. He did something different with every single card here. Again, the 10 of Swords. The Page of Swords. I love the color in this deck. The muted tone, I feel like really, I don't know, it makes the colors pop in a very different way from the full color version, which is absolutely gorgeous as well. I feel like there's a more intuitive connection to the imagery in this deck because of the muted tone for me. And I mean, just for me, I don't mean that that's going to be true for everybody, right? Most people I would assume would be probably more attracted to the full color version, but I don't know. Somehow I feel like I can connect more deeply with this version. The King of Swords. And then finally, we're down to the last suit, and look at these little foxes, baby foxes, maybe, I don't know, baby wolves, maybe. Okay, I'm gonna look that up. I keep sighing. I'm like, I want to talk about every single one of these cards. What does he say? I just want to know if those are foxes or dogs. Da, da, da. Let's. Am I looking at the right thing? Wait. Ace of coins in dense woods, flora and fauna surround a large coin or disc stamped with the image of a stag and the elemental symbol for earth. Coins are the suit of the material world. Okay, aces are beginnings. That's the ace of coins are thought to be the seed card. And the context of the several of the creatures shown in the card are young. Oh, he doesn't say. It doesn't say if it's a fox or dog. Oh yeah, they're all young creatures. Oh, look right there, a bird. Okay, I want to say they're foxes. I guess it doesn't really matter. Like I said, every single time I look through this deck, I find something new that attracts me that I start thinking about. And anyway, that's going to make a really long video if I do that for every single one of them, right? And here we have the Two of Pentacles and the Three of Pentacles or coins. And I love the fact that he didn't use the suit names either because, yeah, call it whatever you want to. You know, they said call it coins, call it pentacles. But what if you wanted to call it something else entirely? You could do that too if you wanted to. I don't know if you'd want to. I don't know if I want to. Maybe I will. That was the Four of Pentacles with the cool squirrel. Look at the squirrel. And then this, the Five of Pentacles. I really like the depiction of this. I like how it kind of makes it feel like, to me, like, oh, you know, here's this guy, you know, maybe he's a little bit down on his luck when it comes to finances right now. And he's like just staring at that last coin that he has. At least that's what came to mind when I looked at it. And here's the Six of Pentacles. And the Seven of Pentacles. And the Eight of Pentacles. Nine of Pentacles. And again, you know, here comes that, you know, kind of magic realism is how I would describe, you know, the imagery in it. I just love it. I think I've said that enough. The toucans in the Ten of Pentacles. I thought was a really different idea, and it actually made me like look up like toucan symbolism. And that's the thing about this card is there's this deck rather. There's so many new and different ideas in this, even with the animals that are used. You know what we read about the faces, the facies thing in the Five of Wands. You know, I learned some new things by reading the book and just by studying these cards. The different things brought my attention and made me kind of think of this in like different ways. You know, looking up even like animal symbolism, you know, using what, you know, Ted Andrews' Animal Speak, which is one of my favorite books of animal symbolism and meanings and stuff. I just thought like, wow, you know, we're given so many kind of new and interesting things to work with, along with, you know, again, the astrological correspondences that, you know, it's like something new, something old, you know, and, you know, just really allowing us to have like, you know, free license to kind of read these cards the way we want to. And finally, the King of Pentacles. I think that guy's so handsome. That's the first thing I thought when I saw this card. It's like everything else aside, correspondence is like he's kind of cute, and I like the stag and how realistic it looks, and just I don't know. That's the end of the deck. The end of this video is probably super, super long totally unbiased walkthrough and micro review, but you know what? I get to be unbiased when I decide, like, okay, for the first time in my life, I'm going to buy a Ciro Marchetti independently produced deck. And so I did it. I'm so happy I did it. Check it out. Go to his website. Check out both versions of this deck and see if it speaks to you. And if it does, let me know. I'd love to hear about your experience with it too. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye, everybody.